So most people try to start making music like this. They'll download an app, watch a million YouTube videos, they'll get frustrated and eventually give up. But what if I told you there is a clear, proven path that takes you from an overwhelmed beginner to actually making your own songs without the expensive gear, the music theory, or wasting months trying to figure it out yourself? If we haven't met, my name's Terrence. I'm a top 40 music producer, songwriter, and Ableton certified trainer, and I help people make professional radio quality music, even if they're just starting from scratch. I've seen it over and over again. Most beginners don't fail because they lack the talent. They fail because they don't have a system. There's no clear order, no real game plan. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the 6 tactical steps you're gonna need to start making real music, even if you've never opened a DAW in your life. Now, I'm not gonna spoil all 6 up front because you need to work through them one at a time. But by the end, you're gonna know exactly what to focus on and in what order. And if you finish this video and feel like you're really ready to level up, check the link in the description to work with me directly. All right, let's get to the first step, which is to set your direction, because before you even attempt to make any music, you first need clarity. So the first thing is to choose your path. Are you more of a producer or a songwriter/artist? If you're a producer, which focuses on composing and arranging the music, then your goal is to make and finish instrumentals. If you're a songwriter/artist, then your focus is on the lyrics and melody and working with vocals, and your goal is to make and finish song ideas. So if you're not sure which role, I would say just pick one where the goal resonates most with you and you feel it out. You can always switch it up later or choose to add on those skills. Now, each role is going to require different gear and a set of skills to start. And even if you want to do both, it is best to pick one to get really good at first, at least for the first month or two. Otherwise, it's going to be too overwhelming. The second thing is to choose your main sound, or in other words, pick a genre, because it's tempting to do whatever you want and be creative. But when you're starting out, it's really important to focus in on one sound. And this isn't to discourage you from, making different kinds of music, but it's really hard to get good at something when you're trying to do too many things at once. I would encourage you to make a playlist of 5 to 10 songs you want to emulate that feel cohesive when played together, and put that in your Spotify and review that frequently as a guideline and reference when you're making your tracks. And the third thing is to choose your mentors, and this is where you should pick at least 3 influential producers or songwriters behind the songs that you love, and study their journey to success and really pay attention to how they work, the tools they use, how they got their opportunities, the people they're around. Now, remember, this is all fluid and can change, but we just need to set a direction to give us clarity and focus. Otherwise, we don't really go anywhere. And this leads us to step number 2, which is to get your gear. And I'm gonna break this down into a few categories so you'll know exactly what you need based on your budget. And I'll be giving you my best bang for buck recommendations along the way. So the first category are the absolute necessities. First, you're gonna need a device like a smartphone or a tablet or computer. Now, a computer is best if you want to use more pro software and have better control over your music and actually make it sound good. If you're on a budget, then use whatever you have. But my recommendation would be an Apple Mac computer. Anything released 2020 or later, obviously the more specs, the better, but anything with at least an M series chip will be good to start. So you can usually look in the refurbished section. You could usually find a really good deal on older Macs here. The second necessity you're gonna need are headphones, and you're gonna want wired headphones so you avoid things like latency, where you record something and hear a delay in the playback. Now, if you're on a budget, obviously use whatever you have or even buy dollar store headphones. But my recommendation would be the ATH M50X. This is the industry standard and is a pretty good bang for buck as well. Now, the second category are the should haves. And the first should have is the audio interface. And this is gonna give you a higher quality audio, which is gonna allow you also to connect other equipment like studio speakers, guitars, and pro level microphones. And my recommendation is the Scarlett 4th Gen series by Focusrite, as you see here. If you want to save a bit of money, get the Solo, but the 2i2 will be more future-proof and give more flexibility, especially if you plan on recording either 2 mics at the same time, or recording 2 guitars at the same time, or recording an instrument where you need it to be stereo, stuff like that. Now, some equipment have built-in audio interfaces in them, like certain instruments or USB mics, but I recommend having this as a separate unit like the audio interface as a separate unit, as it just gives you more control and quality. Now, the second should have is a microphone, specifically a quality condenser microphone. Now, if you plan on recording any live instruments like drums, acoustic guitar, or vocals, you're gonna need a good mic and not a USB one if you're, once again, trying to future-proof your setup. And I'd recommend the Audio-Technica condenser mic series, the AT2020 if you're on a tight budget, and the AT4040 if you have a bit more to splurge. It's a good all-rounder for that price point. And since this isn't a USB mic, you're gonna have to have an audio interface for this to work. And you're also gonna need a mic stand and a pop filter and an XLR cable to hook it all up to your audio interface. And now the third should have, and this mostly applies to producers, is a Splice or a Wave subscription. And this is really important for getting good sounds and is used by pros that make hit records. Like if I was stranded on an island and I can only take one thing with me to make hits, it would be these two subscriptions. So it's Splice here and Waves over here. Now the third category are nice to haves. The first nice to have is a MIDI keyboard. Now you don't need this to make music, but it definitely can be useful if you want to physically play things. And as a producer, it can be nice to record drum patterns and melodies from the keyboard. As a songwriter, it could be nice to play the piano while you're writing your song. So the MIDI keyboard that I like is the Novation Launch Key series that you see here. And I would recommend you get a sustain pedal if you plan on playing realistic piano, and you can easily find a cheap one on Amazon. The second nice to have are studio monitors. Now you can get by doing everything on budget speakers and headphones, but you're gonna be making better music when you can hear things better on pro level studio monitors. Now this really depends on your budget and personal preference, but I recommend you actually go to a pro audio store and test out your favorite songs on studio monitors and see which ones sound best. Now the monitor size is also going to depend on how big your room is. Generally around 5 inches is good for an average size bedroom, but I would talk to the sales rep there for, the best advice. But my personal favorite are these JBL 305P Mark IIs. I find that they have a very balanced sound and are really good for mixing. Now, remember to just start simple with the gear that you need and only upgrade when you're ready. So now this takes us to step 3, which is to pick a DAW. Now that you have the gear in place, you're gonna need a DAW, short for Digital Audio Workstation, which is the software to actually help you record and make the music. So if you absolutely have no budget and no computer, then I'd recommend you get BandLab or GarageBand if you're on iPhone. If you have a computer, some free options are Cakewalk by BandLab or GarageBand if you have a Mac. And then there are the DAWs that the professionals use, and I'll just be listing the most popular in no particular order. You have FL Studio, Logic Pro, Pro Tools, Studio One, Reason, and Ableton Live, which is my personal go-to. And some of them offer different pricing tiers that are more budget friendly, so that might factor into your decision. But the key thing is to not spend too much time overthinking this. There is no right answer. They each have their own pros and cons. It all comes down to a personal preference, and just know that hits have been made on all of these DAWs. So if you're having a hard time deciding, just pick the same DAW as your favorite producer and songwriter. Done. All right, now we get into step 4, which is learning the DAW basics. And this is usually where a lot of people get stuck from information overload. Like, we don't need to watch a million YouTube videos on all the features, the workflow tips, etc. We just need 1 or 2 videos that cover the basic fundamentals. So I'd recommend you search how to use Insert Your DAW for beginners like I have here. And the key things you want to learn is the layout of the transport and what all the main buttons do. So for example, it's this up here, the layout of the tracks and what all the main buttons do, the basic recording and editing functions like, moving clips around and how to edit them, like slicing, copying, pasting, and last but most importantly, exporting. So here in Ableton Live, it would be this menu. So if I were a producer, my goal here is to learn basic MIDI and how to make instrument and drum sound. So a specific search like, how do I do MIDI in blank for beginners? And you can be more specific to say MIDI drums or MIDI instruments, because that will help you get sounds like pianos, guitars, and bass. Or you can just skip the whole MIDI thing and just work with audio samples that come inside your DAW. It's a lot easier and direct, but it's a little less flexible to make changes, so do keep that in mind. Now, for songwriters, the goal would be to focus on importing beats and recording vocals. So specific search terms like, how do I import instrumental into blank, or how to record vocals in blank for beginners. The most important thing at this stage is to learn only what you need and nothing more. And this takes us to step 5, which is to make something and export it. And this is where we get your first win. We're going to create a little idea. It's going to be small, but it's going to be finished. So if you're a producer, your goal is to produce a 16-bar instrumental loop or a 1 to 2 minute beat idea if you're feeling ambitious. So the first thing I would do is to search something along the lines of how to make a beat using blank stock sounds for beginners and follow along. And the key thing is stock sounds might be important to include, so they're not using any third-party things that you might not have. And if you like, you can throw in hip hop beat or pop beat to just narrow your search. And some key things to include in your beat is to make sure that it, number 1, has instruments, melody, or a high part. Number 2, that it has a bass. And number 3, that it has drums. And once you have all 3 of those elements, then export an MP3 or a wave of at least a 16-bar loop or 1 to 2 minute idea. Now you can YouTube how to export if you don't already know that from the previous step. And if you're a songwriter, then your goal is to come up with a hook idea or write out a full verse, pre and chorus if you're feeling ambitious. And the first thing we're gonna do is to find a beat on YouTube or BeatStars. If you're on YouTube, then you can just search genre or artist type beat. So here I just put in Justin Bieber type beat. You can substitute that for R&B type beat or hip hop type beat. And then you just download it and import. On BeatStars, it would be a similar thing here where you would just search for the beat that you want. And then you download it and import it into your session as I have here. And what I would do is to identify where the hook part is of the instrumental. So let's just say this is the most exciting part of the instrumental. This feels like the hook. Then I'm gonna record a bunch of ideas on this. So maybe I'll record an idea here on track 1, record an idea on track 2, on track 3, record a bunch of ideas. And then I would just simply pick the best idea that I like and export that whole section. We're just gonna keep it super simple. Now I wanna highlight how important exporting is. It doesn't need to sound good and it probably won't. And honestly, you'll be lucky if it does. But we need to get into the habit of finishing something and have something to show for. So just always remember that done is better than perfect. And this takes us to step 6, which is to repeat and improve just 1%. And this is how you grow without burning out, just one tiny upgrade at a time. Now, if you're a producer, I want you to just pick one thing to improve next time. And I'm gonna give you a few examples. You can learn how to use one new tool like Splice. You can learn how to apply one extra effect like an EQ. You can learn how to make one change to your arrangement just to spice it up. You can learn one extra hotkey to improve your speed. Now, if you're a songwriter, once again, pick one thing to improve next time. I'll give you a couple examples here. You can layer in one extra ad-lib or double track. You can learn how to use a tuning plugin to clean up your vocal. You can learn one extra vocal editing technique like comping, or you can figure out where to find better instrumentals. This is just a quick list I came up with. Feel free to think of other things you want to improve on, but an important reminder is that it can be very overwhelming. There's so many things you can get better at, so just pick one to get better at every time. That's the 1% rule. So if you made it this far, you now have a clear roadmap. There's no more guessing, no more random YouTube rabbit holes. You know exactly what to focus on and in what order. But the real key is this: you don't need to master everything right now or overnight. What matters is that you're showing up consistently, even if it's just 15 minutes a day to work on one part of your track. It's the people who consistently show up every day, that commit themselves to improving, that are actually finishing things. Those are the people that get good. And as a reminder, if you are really serious about leveling up and want me to coach you personally, then check out the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next session.